Welcome to the Agile Wire. Brought to you by Wisconsin Agility. We want you to get agile and stay agile. Now here are your hosts, Jeff Bubolz and Chad Beier.
And we're recording. All right, kick us off, Jeff.
All right, we have Isaiah Ness joining us. Isaiah's a entrepreneur that we met a few weeks ago at a conference. So a little background about Isaiah. He launched Beier Trading Companies in 2019, an eco-friendly clothing brand. He's also co-founded Project Green Energy, bringing residential solar power to homes across Wisconsin. He's also founded another company called Array Energy, a solar company built around one core idea, putting the customer first. He was the CEO of that company in 2022. And also right now is one of the founders of Beier Industries. Isaiah, I probably missed out a few other things. I know you said you've ran like 7 companies and there's a lot going on there. So what connects all of these companies, all these ventures that you've been a part of over your career so far?
Yeah, I would say that the big thing for me has always been trying to figure out how you can incorporate what your passion is into the work. It's something that a lot of people have discussed, and I think it's a little cliche and maybe overused now, but the big thing for me was always an interest in the business world and then figuring out how I could make that around the focus of some of my hobbies. And so I grew up golfing, hunting, fishing, a lot of outdoor time. Just love nature, love the environment. Would take any moment I can to be out on the water or be in the woods or be on the golf course, and was always instilled in me from a young age that, whatever you take from the world, you got to give back. And so I started by just kind of falling in love with the sustainable service process end, was introduced into some sustainable products as well. And that really kicked off the journey. Started in the product space with a goal of trying to figure out how to get into the service space. And so was in a spot where was trying to do kind of sustainable clothing, eco-friendly products, things like that. Learned a lot through that business, realized I am not a product guy. Definitely as much fun as I had with that, and it being one of the first businesses, it was a learning curve that really pushed me into every company that has followed. And that was really along the lines of service. Obviously, I've done a lot in solar, a lot in energy, but that's really where it all stemmed from.
And you focus a lot on the different tribal nations here in Wisconsin. How did you find that niche compared to just like the mass markets?
Yeah, I was in an interesting position. I was the CEO of the last solar company that I had started. The company was doing great, had great projections, and I found myself in a spot where the product of solar was becoming less important to me. And a lot of it was stemming from I was servicing the same type of client, and mainly it was the person that could easily afford it, and probably wasn't looking at it from the same environmental reason. I think that was one of the interesting concepts as you get into it. And I'm thinking I'm going after this type of client, and you learn through sales, trial and error, who your client actually is. And so the last residential project that I did while I was still full-time with this company was a tribal member in Oneida Nation that was a family friend, so just outside of Green Bay. And he just asked me when we were doing some paperwork, like, hey, would you ever want to do this for tribes? And so when I was first introduced to it at the end of 2023, I was like, yeah, I definitely would love to. And then had kind of my first interactions with tribes and this concept of solar around the same time. At that time, I found that like the passion for why was the same. Like it was very much an environmental, it was very much an ecosystem basis. And I think, there obviously every company, every service has to have a bottom line, right? You have to figure out how to make money. But generally, I've found the most sustainable processes, the most sustainable companies are ones that solve issues and make money. And so that's really where the focus kind of came from. But it was, a situation I've talked about a lot, and I'm extremely blessed and grateful it happened, because if it weren't for the residential end and it weren't for getting that project done, a lot of what we have today wouldn't be there.
So you've started a lot of companies. You found your niche, right? Of like who you want to serve and what you want to do for them and how you want to help them. But you've gone through probably a number of hard moments. Every entrepreneur does, right? Like there's difficult moments where you've probably felt like, oh man, not sure how we're gonna get through this. But like, what were some of those hardest moments you've been through, and what did it teach you?
There's a lot of hard moments. And I've learned a lot. I've definitely learned a lot. I would say there's a saying that I live by, and I spoke about it at the conference in which we met. 3 words: conviction, resiliency, consistency. Right? Those are the 3 words that I live by. The conviction process, you got to believe in the low moments. The resiliency process, you have to focus on developing plans, strategies, a business that can survive changes in administrations, changes in the market, changes in the industry, things that are always going to be outside of your control. I mean, building off of that point, you can't control the actions of others, right? And once you understand that in entrepreneurship, it gets a whole lot easier, And then the last piece is the consistency part. And this kind of ties in a lot to the tough times. There was probably about a year and a half where I had basically taken all the profits that I had earned from previous businesses and reinvested them into other startups that were not working at all. And then kind of found my way back a little bit, was feeling good, back into a little bit of a momentum, a little bit more financial security. And then starting Sunbear did the same thing, except for this time with Sunbear, I knew a little bit what was about to happen with Sunbear Industries. It was one where I knew I was going to have to invest everything I had into the company, and that there was going to be a research and development timeline of anywhere from 6 months to a year. And that was going to be a time where it was going to be really, really hard to charge for work, mainly because you're going into a new market. And more importantly, you're getting tribes to trust you, right? So that year was thousands of hours of pro bono work. I mean, just going all in, earning trust, earning a reputation that had somewhat carried over from the private sector. It's not like we were going in with a blank slate, but it was not an easy process either. And there was a significant point I can remember just having conversations with friends, family, all of it, where credit cards were maxed out, bank account was at 0. And everybody thought, like, this is like, if there's a time you quit, right? Like, see the writing on the wall, like, now's your time. And it was one of those where, again, that's where the resiliency comes in. I'm a firm believer that any business works with time. Even I think about some of the businesses that I struggled or maybe might be, I wouldn't say failures, but less successful than the company I have now. I'm a firm believer that if I would have stuck with them, I don't know how long, but at some point the direction would have tipped and would have changed, and it would have been successful. And the tough part is, as an entrepreneur, you don't know what that is, right? You don't know if that's 90 days. You don't know if it's 2 years. You don't know if it's 7 years. Like there is an element of resiliency that is needed. And so been through a lot of ups and downs. I would say there's always going to be tough parts in entrepreneurship. Like the struggles I face today are much different than what they were in the past. Now it's, figuring out what to do with certain stuff. Where do you invest money? But yeah, definitely have learned that those 3 words, the conviction, the resiliency, the consistency, are really what separate the people who make it versus those who don't.
Yeah. I love those 3 words. I have 2 others jotted down from the conference, and I don't know if they were yours. But if I remember the conversation correctly, it was around being sometimes your biggest critic and also your biggest supporter when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you could speak to that and maybe tie that into like the decision-making process. Cause I think that's one of the hardest things, like to pivot or persevere.
Yeah.
Like no one has a crystal ball. We can't predict the future, which is why staying in the game is what typically matters.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you remember the context of that conversation around the critic and supporter?
I do. I remember speaking on it. And the big concept there is kind of what I related it to already, is you can't control the actions of others, right? So when you get into entrepreneurship, and this is one thing I learned very early on, even if you co-found something, right? You cannot control the actions of your co-founder, right? You cannot control what's happening in their life, the things that may or may not come up, but also you can't control those three things for them, right? The consistency, the conviction, the resiliency. So in that context, I would say that understanding what your resource is, and your resource is yourself. Therefore, you have to find this kind of fine, delicate balance between, hey, I believe in myself, I'm going to make this work. And also, like, you got to step it up, right? Like that is a very honest conversation you have to be able to have with yourself. Every morning, you got to wake up and support yourself. And then in the evening, you got to look in the mirror and say, all right, where did I waste time today? Right? Where could I have been better today? Where could I have done this? And I think the moment you stop doing that is the moment that you no longer have accountability. And accountability would really be like the fourth thing that I practice. And I think it ties all three of those words together. But you have to be in a spot of constant support and critique. And when I would say you hit that breaking point of like, hey, it's time to pivot, I think if you do those two things, I don't know if it's a defined moment, right? I think it's one of those things that as long as you are constantly supporting yourself, but you're also critiquing yourself, it might not be like, this is the aha moment. Like, people ask me that all the time with Sunbury Industries, like, what was the aha moment? I say we didn't really have one, right? Like, from the moment I started working with tribes and just being there, it felt right. Now, there was a bunch of changes along the way. There was a bunch of opportunities that we recognized, but there wasn't a big catalyst that said, oh yeah, this is how you're going to make it. This is how you're going to find success. It was just doing the same thing day in, day out, and just learning to support myself, but also learning to hold myself accountable.
What are those habits that like help you with that accountability and consistency? Like, do you have daily habits, that things you try to do to like help you? Like you kind of maybe talked a little like that reflection of like every day, how am I going to be better? Where did I waste my time? What can I improve from today? Are there other examples?
Yeah, I would say as far as habits, the big one for me is, and this is, I would say, probably a little bit non-traditional to others, I try and carve out like 2 to 3 hours every single day of uninterrupted thinking time. Like, the biggest habit that I have that stayed consistent, and don't get me wrong, like I've gotten into the habits, and I think it's tough when you have a business that's multi-state and you're constantly traveling. Like, I've had the habits of diet, exercise, reading, right? But I would be lying if I said that stayed consistent every single day and I was able to practice that every single day. I'd say the two things that I look at is, one, that self-reflection every day, even if it's sometimes you write it down, sometimes you don't, right? Sometimes it's just a mental battle of saying, hey, this is how I'm starting, this is how I'm ending. But dedicating that thinking time, like, people, I think, underestimate how important it is to just be with your thoughts, right? And just really, really reflect on everything that's happened. I think where one of my strengths has been, and where it was a shortfall in the past, is there's kind of this new mindset of hustle culture, where it's like you make a decision, you double down on it, and you go, right? And you don't look back. That has never worked for me. Not once. I've seen it work in like smaller short-term methods, but I've always found success personally from thinking it through, watching what everyone else does, observing everything that's happening and then making an action. Because generally when I do that, and what I found is when I was the guy in the past, I would just, hey, we're going into this and we're going in heavy. You hit like the 60-90 day wall where it's like, all right, yeah, I don't know what to do now, right? Whereas by thinking it through, just the time almost makes the choice for you, right? Like you almost don't have to make decisions the way you would if you just think it through. And so I'd say my big daily habit is just sitting down and thinking. And sometimes it's drive time. I would say a lot of friends, family, and others often are like, how are you driving for 3 hours with no music, no podcast? Like what is going on? And it's just, it's my time. Right. And people don't realize too, that like, I don't factor that as work. But essentially I am working. Right. So even if I get, 30 hours in on my computer, like I'm probably matching that, in the time that I'm just thinking away from my computer, which is in the end contributing 60 hours or however many hours on a weekly basis to my company. So uninterrupted thinking time is the one habit that no matter what, I hit every day.
I love it so much. I mean, so Jeff and I, the work we do, we work with a lot of organizations, trying to improve things inside the organizations, a lot of times working with leadership teams. And I feel like in corporate America and probably beyond, it's like a disease that leadership teams catch, where it's like the easy thing is to build out your schedule and stay busy all day long and run back-to-back meetings. The hard thing is carving out slack time. And like very few people have the discipline to do it. I mean, it really is a very unique thing, I think. I mean, I get excited when I hear you say things like that, because like just imagine right now if across all of corporate America, leaders started carving out slack time and making that thinking time a priority. I just think it would transform organizations almost practically, overnight, like versus just the rat race of just running around late to meetings, canceling meetings. It's very hard. It's very hard.
If you could go back to your previous self, Isaiah, like what message would you give to yourself as, you've now started many companies, you've got a very successful company. Like what do you wish you knew at a younger age?
I would say the big thing is slowing down. We just talked about it a little bit on that daily habit, but it's interesting for me because I remember being the young influenced mind at like 17, 18, 19 and like watching YouTube videos and this and that and like thinking success was 85 hours a week, no sleep, 365 days a year. What I have realized, and unless somebody can find an example and show me a different reality, I don't know a single person that can't get burned out. Like, I think that there are people that have a higher level of tolerance. I think that there's some people that might have a lower level of tolerance, but every single person I know, whether they are, approaching $1 billion in net worth or they are in the beginning phase, if they stack 80-hour, 90-hour weeks with no break, they get burned out. Like, and I've never found an example of what's not true. And I think what's interesting about that and why I say slow down, is because I think slow down grounds you in reality. Like what you see online and what you see in a lot of these videos and these motivational speeches, like, I don't know any real examples of that. And so I think when I was younger, it was like, I'd read, I'd watch, I would absorb all this stuff. And it was like, okay, awesome. And then my mindset has shifted probably from actually finding some success myself, in a personal and a financial and just a goal oriented way. I think once I was able to hit a little bit of success in a couple of different categories, I realized that the only thing that I truly know is the stuff that I've experienced or have firsthand witness to. Not that, it's a conspiracy or that you don't believe in this or you don't believe in that, but these videos that I was watching, right, as I started to meet guys that, had high net worths and had these giant companies, like they were playing more golf than I was, right? Every single one of them. Like that was just the reality. Like they were. And what I found with a lot of them too is like their efficiency and their output was just insanely high, but it's because they never burned out because they found a balance. They found a balance. And it's like you have to grind. You have to be able to work hard. That's part of that consistency component. But if you don't dedicate to yourself some time to recover, if you don't dedicate some time to at least step away, like even the thinking, one of the examples I'll use is like I spent probably 8 different afternoons in the month of October and beginning part of November out in the woods in a tree stand, right? 90% of that time was spent thinking about my company existing operations. Now with that, I was doing a completely different activity, right? I was doing something unrelated. Every now and then might answer a phone call or send a quick email or send a quick text, but like that's what prevents me from burning out, and it just keeps me rejuvenated. So like if I were going to sit down with my younger self, like one, slow down, right? Like it was interesting the moment I stopped caring about money, it came. Like, hey, you don't need to compare yourself to, what these guys on YouTube are saying their net worth was by this time or what their successes were, because ultimately none of it matters. None of it matters. And we've talked about this a little bit at the conference, but your health is your wealth, right? And if you don't slow down, you are going to sacrifice your health. And at that point, there's no amount of money, there's no amount of time that you are going to get back. So that would be the big thing for me is just slowing down is so simple, but it's so complicated because there's all these different intersections, there's all these different inputs and outputs. But that would be the really big thing. 18, 19 years old, like just enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. I think there's that saying that like, what does a person want when they have their health, and the list goes on and on and on. And then it's like, what does a person want when they don't want their health? They just want their health, right? So you got to take care of that first. I think that's huge. I think it's a great point. You also made me think of my brother was in the military, and he uses these different sayings all the time. And so the one that he uses is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And it's like a great life lesson for entrepreneurs too. It's like you just that consistency, like you're saying, over time, it's what matters. And if you burn out, then you're out of the game, and you got to be in the game to continue to play. So I think that's essential.
Definitely.
What question haven't we asked you, Isaiah, that we should be asking you?
That's always an interesting one. I mean, I don't know. Like, is there anything along the lines that you guys want to know about existing business operations or?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things we help organizations with is helping them be more responsive and adaptive, right? Like, we help them to really use change as a competitive advantage. Like, if you can change faster than your competitors, then you're going to be able to adapt to market situations, new demands, new opportunities faster. You mitigate more risks faster, all those things. And so I'm not sure exactly where you are with Sun Beier Technologies, but as a startup kind of grows, they start to become like a bigger company, and they tend to slow down and lose what kind of got them there. And I don't know if you've got to that point yet. Is that something that you're seeing from an operational standpoint?
Yes. So what's interesting about that is when you get to a certain scale in business, right, and you start to get into managing, sizable pipelines, right? Every conversation looks different. The conversations I have with banks now, it's different people. It's different people. One, it's different conversations. The conversations we have with clients is different. We're not an everything company anymore, right? Like we're not going to do certain stuff. We're not going to sacrifice our quality. We don't have to maybe undercut the market on price because we are in a spot where we're fortunate enough to turn down work. I think the interesting part for me now is like as you have this influx of cash and this influx of contracts and all these different services and things you're doing, is how do you balance scale with operations, right? Like I'm in a spot right now where we're probably onboarding about 3 new employees between now and the end of Q1 2026. I could onboard 10. And that's the tough part, right? Like, how do you get to 3, right? Like, if you could onboard 10, why aren't you onboarding 10? Well, okay, now our operating expense increases from, 30K a month to 130K a month, right? And so there's a huge um, a huge point to not miss to what you're saying on that scale point. I think where I am unbelievably fortunate is we're growing with tech. And so I think what our predecessors or former companies had in problem, and we were talking about this the other day in a market analysis with a giant firm that we work with, like their firm has 90 people dedicated to basically the same services we perform. Why? It was built that way. It's an old, 100-year-old plus firm. It's got all these components. And the answer in the past was scale was employees, right? Like however many employees you had, that determined how much success you had. And now it's interesting with like tech and AI. We have a pretty high output as a firm. We're just hiring our first, I shouldn't say our first, we are hiring our second, like, true administrative assistant right now because tech has been able to handle a lot of that for us. And so what's interesting is, like, we were talking about just, if you have a small team of people, right? You have 6 people that do this, and that, what's your potential output? And like in the past, and I'd say like consulting or development world, 6 people might hit $1 million, $2 million a year, right? That was probably the most manageable. That's aggressive workload. Now 6 people, some tech, some automation processes, integrated CRMs, having joint workspaces. I mean, depending on what your service offering is, 6 people could be 10, $15 million. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. And so I think the fortunate part that we found is, like, there has been no better time to scale, because we're scaling through a period of chaos, right? Where we've had very, very different policies coming out from, the federal level, from the private sector, from the tribal sector. Like, it's shifted a lot in the last 2 to 3 years, right? Different people in power, different people making decisions. But we've also been able to grow at the same time with tech, with AI, with all the things that are coming out. And it's just, it's insane now what your output can be without compromising quality.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely interesting, right? It's like, do I invest into a $90,000 software, or do I hire a person? And I'm very much a personable guy, so I've always tried to do the people end, as much as possible, and create opportunity for others. But at the same time, like, you're scaling a business, right? And like, what is the output of everything? So it's there's a lot of comparing and contrasting. There's a lot of like benchmarking on existing operations, but I would say it's a great time to be in it.
Yeah, I think you need both though, right? So we've talked to a few different people, and there's some pretty, I don't know, these seem like crazy estimates that are out there. Like within 5 to 10 years, there'll be a $1 billion company with like one person running it, maybe a team. Maybe it'll be a team of 8. But like that big, like it's kind of crazy to think about that AI could enable that. And so I don't know. I think one of the things that we found is that when you're using AI on these small teams, you have to use it as a team member and not as like a tool. And so it's like a big mindset shift. It's like a wicked smart intern with a PhD, but it's like, you get an intern, so you still got to like check its work and like make sure it's doing what you wanted it to do, but it's wicked smart, So, and so I think, yeah, the future is crazy. Like what you'll be able to do in the future, and things that have never been thought of is possible, because of what technology is enabling us to do. So I think that's great. I think that's where most entrepreneurs have to be. They're going to go first, right? They're going to figure this out because they probably have the biggest need.
Yeah, that's That's exactly right. I like that analogy too of the intern to AI. That's a good one. I'm definitely going to use it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, maybe to end on a positive note. So you mentioned having the luxury. I don't know if those, I'm paraphrasing your words, but having the luxury of being able to say no to certain deals, certain clients, certain customers. And I know Jeff and I have had those moments over the years where, getting to a no as quick as possible is sometimes the best thing, because again, it doesn't waste your time. It doesn't waste their time. Do you ever, I'm curious if your leadership team, your whole company, do you ever celebrate those, or like, only in your mind, or do you actually have like celebrations when you almost dodge a bullet? Like, it was good that we didn't say yes to that deal.
Yeah, it's funny because we just had one the other day where it was like we were kind of going back and forth on like whether we bid this project or not, and we're like, it was funny because it was a private bid, and it was one where I'm looking at the players and I'm kind of seeing the behind the scenes stuff work, and I'm like, maybe we're in second or third on this running list, but like, that this company is going to win it. And we threw our name in the hat for the sake of shaking it up a little bit, for providing a different lens, a different context, and honestly letting that, what would have been potential client, negotiate their terms better with the company we knew that was gonna win, right? And it was interesting, because I remember getting the email afterwards, saying like, "Hey, we regret to inform you, like you didn't win this contract." And we rarely bid stuff. Like we might send out 4 bids a year. 95% of what we do is referral. Like we have 100% client retention rate. So like every tribe we worked with 3 years ago, we still work with, right? And we just keep stacking and keep going. And so we're selective on who we bring on. But I remember getting that email, and it was like probably one of the happiest moments I've had to like not have a receivable. I was like, this would have been a mess of a project. It was like a weight off the shoulders, because even bidding it was stressful. Going through that whole process of like the interview, like everything was just not a fun time. And also it was such a complex project that it was one too. I was looking at it and I'm like, here's a weekend I'm gonna have to rearrange in my calendar to fulfill this, right? Like it was an interesting project. And so I would say what we try and celebrate, is the times that we make the right choice, right? And sometimes that's turning down work, sometimes it's taking on work, sometimes it's saying like, hey, you know what, we're going to lose money on it, but this is why. Like for us, that is the best feeling, and probably the moments we celebrate the most. Don't get me wrong, my team, we try and do, just go, whether we're at a conference, like go out for a nice meal, do things like that, consistently, right? Like the other fortunate part is with a small company is like you can spend more intimate times together, right? So we'll go play around of golf, reserve a couple of tea times, do all that. We'll go take a trip somewhere, right? We're able to do a lot of those things, and again, it comes to that point of like just having such high output, relative to overhead, which is awesome. But we definitely do try and celebrate, and we definitely do try and enjoy, even the moments of like closing a really hard one, or even the moments of like saying, hey, we're done on this, like that was horrible, nothing about it was enjoyable, but you know what, we're moving on. And so, I'd say we do a lot of celebrating, but there's definitely been a couple of times that we might have had a good laugh, or a good evening after not winning something because it was just a sense of relief.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I know Jeff and I can resonate a lot with that. We've had those moments, and I just think it's important to celebrate those, right? We've seen a lot of people go and start their own companies and start their own businesses, and I think the worst thing you can do is race to the bottom on price and take everything out there, because you have no differentiator. Then you're just operating on your comment earlier. I loved is, when you focus on money, it doesn't come. And then when you stop focusing on money, referrals come in, business comes in. So I don't know. It's not like it's a hard rule, but it does feel that way sometimes. Like just the money will come if you have a good product, a good service, you're consistent, you have conviction, you're resilient, you keep pushing. It'll happen, right? Stay in the game. So
the last point I'd add on to that, like the interesting part is Sunbear Industries. So I had two companies by Sunbear, but Sunbear Industries was the first company I had that I didn't create a business plan before. So there was no, like, I had a concept. I wrote some things down of like what I wanted to do, what I wanted to try and experience. We did a bunch of like almost like Venn diagram, like flow chart stuff, like whatever. And not only did none of that stuff end up being what we what we did, but like I am so beyond happy that like I did not dedicate what I had done in the past, which was like 2 months to creating a business plan. And the part that I find so funny is like there's this standard now of like what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to get a business plan, and then you're supposed to open up a company bank account, and then you're supposed to go ask for money, and then you're supposed to raise capital, and you're not supposed to care about equity in the beginning. And I find like 80% of the time that to be so backwards, like just so backwards. I tell everybody, get experience before you write a business plan, because what are you writing your business plan with, right? Like what are you working on? Like,
and then you've got a sunk cost fallacy, right? Because you're just like, well, I don't want to get rid. I spent a month or two writing that thing, going through and doing all that analysis. Like, I got to use it, right? And then like you don't want to throw it away when you know there's a better way. And so I think that's great. Like we always we talk about in our work moving from an analysis mindset to a feedback mindset. How can we rapidly learn fast in a product? And so like I think less planning a little bit and more feedback is what you're kind of talking about here, and I think it translates well. So yeah, we kind of do the same thing. I don't know. My advice if someone's going to start a company be similar to what you just said. It's like day one, create your entity, an LLC, whatever you're going to do, get a bank account, and figure out how you can, and then go sell something, and then figure out how you're, then take down the money, and then figure out what you're going to do next. Like that's probably the way you get started. Like don't go too far ahead of yourself.
That's the point. It's like you spend 2 months planning before you do anything. And then you go sit down with the bank and you dress up nice and you go in there and you're like, here's my business plan. And they still give you no money. You know what I mean? Like it's still not a business that like you're going to get a credit line or something like that right away. And that's what's interesting to me is like and I've found this at least in my journey, and I'm sure other people have been much better at navigating it than me, but like you want a bank to answer, you better come with either hard copy receivables or you might better have the money. Like, and so it's definitely interesting, and I kind of agree with that more.
Yeah, I know what we do is a lot, like we don't have all these assets. Consulting is essentially we get paid for our time, right? So it's an easier business to start, but I do remember, I just dug it up right now. I had this Google Sheet that I started, and I think the first tab in that Google Sheet when I was thinking about quitting my previous consultancy I worked at where Jeff and I met and start my own company afterwards, I created a tab called Things I Care About. And like, yeah, I crunched the numbers and I knew what I needed to make to survive on my own. But ultimately, that was what drove me to quit. It's like 1, 2, 3. It's like 4 or 5 things that I just jotted down and like, these are the things I care about. And they were mostly in opposition to what I was seeing at the company I was working at. The things that were frustrating me that drove me away were the things that I wanted to change and have control over. So I just think it's funny. Like I didn't have a business plan. I just had, maybe back to that conviction, I had like 5 to 6 things that I thought were really important in the work we do and mattered to me. So I don't know. For anyone out there, maybe with that hustle mentality of like, you don't have to start with a lot. It's actually best to experiment your way into the future versus plan your way into the future. So
funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, this was fun. I think this is the moment where we say, is there anything you want to plug?
Anything I want to plug? I mean, I think the big thing for me would just be the support from the people that have stayed there through it all, right? It's not an easy thing, whether it's, a family member or friend, because there has been sacrifice in that end, right? Like, you do lose time with other people. At the end of the day, like, you're not only the person. Another conversation I was recently having is like, you're not the person that's just completing the work now, right? You're the person that's sending out invoices. You're the person that's writing up contracts. You're the person that's managing, right? And it's like, it's one thing when you work for a company because it's peer implementation and maybe some management reviews, leadership development in there, but like, it's 80%, 90% of your time is fulfill. And then you get into your own company, and you have to figure out how to make up 80-90% with 60%, right? So there's a time issue there where in the beginning there's a lot more time. So I'd say mainly the plug would be the team at Beier Industries that has stayed consistent, especially the ones that are there from the beginning and have stayed consistent throughout, the family and friends, and then I would say one of the most important parts is the clients. Like, people ask me like how much time I put into business development, marketing, ad spend, all that, and it's like, I just say our clients built it for us. Like, you want to know where our business plan came from. It was from our clients. Like, listening is the biggest thing. And I'd say the piece of advice I'd leave everyone with is, I remember noticing this pretty early on, actually, in high school. I am really, really good at listening and learning to others. I'm not great at working for others. Right. And so understanding that as well is like, I'm the guy that always would, even in high school jobs or whatever, and I had started my own business in high school too, but, or tried to, I found that like I was, the guy that when it comes to sitting down, getting coffee with somebody, getting perspective, I absorb it all. When it comes to, being the guy that's just implementing, I'm looking at every single inefficiency, everything that's going wrong, everything that needs to be fixed, every way I can do it better. And so, be careful on advice, but listen to everyone around you.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
It's great.
Awesome. Well, this was fun. Thanks for joining us. We'll grab stuff from, if you want to leave anything in the show notes afterwards, and maybe we'll catch a round of golf at some point in the future here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I don't know if you guys are looking out your window, but it's going to be a little while.
Yeah. Maybe snowmobiling. I don't know, ice fishing.
Yeah.
Maybe ice fishing. Ice fishing would be fun.
Yeah. There you go.
If you found value in today's episode, share this with a friend. Until next time, get agile and stay agile.